Hey guys, my name is DividableHalo, and today I am joined by the UNR President, Lingling Killer.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, anyways, as you, if you guys haven't noticed, oh shit, there's a ringtone in my background. Anyways, if you guys haven't seen the last video with the interview with Strike, I mentioned a little something saying that hopefully we could get an interview with Lingling Killer, and he has agreed. And yeah, I'm really excited to have you here with us.
Well, thanks.
All right. So today we're going to be asking about the history of the UNR and the history of the UN. So, can you tell me when you first joined the Halo clan community?
Well, the first clan I joined was the United Nations, and this was back in around 2012, close to when the game first came out. And myself, like a lot of people in the community that tried joining the UN, I sent a comment on the video, no reply. I sent a message to the leaders, no reply. Sent a message to the DIs, no reply. So it actually took me about 3 months of persistent messages and annoyances to get into the UN. And when I finally did, I was in the second generation, and it was a lot simpler back then.
Uh,
So
all right. So, from what I've heard, you've also made it to like a really high rank within the UN during the time. So, you also met General JB himself, right?
yes, it's actually kind of a two-pronged story. So the first time I joined was what I just talked about, and I was in there for a little bit, and I ended up there were two officers in there, right? Static Rush and General Brent. And these guys were officers from the first generation. They were DIs, and they were planning on leaving. So they threw this little, I guess you could say, tournament, right? It was team tack, not the team tack that we know today. It was kind of a previous version. And they said to the winners of the game would get promotions all the way to sergeant, right? And if you had been in the UN, you would know how big, having a promotion was. That really affected your standing there. So I worked really hard to get there. My hands were sweating. I was really nervous, but my team, me and two other people, ended up coming out on top of the game. So I was really happy. I'd been in the UN for months at that point. I'd been in every single training session. I'd been online every day, just no lifing that clan, but I'd never gotten any recognition. So I was really excited to finally get to that role to where I could start training other people. And about a day later, Shadow Sniper himself contacted me and asked they believed that I falsified my rank, that I made it up. And so we ended up talking about it, and they learned that it was Static Rush and General Brunt who had left, and he bumped me all the way back down to Corporal, which was a higher rank than I was, but obviously I was extremely upset, right? Because I had been in there forever. I'd finally gotten this rank. I went through that huge ordeal with the team tac, and I had it all taken away with me. So I left, and for a couple months, I'd say maybe 2 or 3, I had kind of bouncing around the community, right? I would start a clan, it would fall, I'd start a new one, it would fall, and this happened repeatedly. It went on. Actually, about a month before I joined the UN, the second time, I made the United Nations Republic, which is where I came up with the name for this one. But that obviously didn't work out, and so I went back to the UN, and that's the second time that I joined. And that one, by that point, I was a lot more mature. I had been, kind of hardened through this whole ordeal of, having rebellions in my clan, having people leaving. It's just very difficult to run a clan, it still is. But for me back then, being like a 13-year-old kid, it wasn't going to work. And so I joined the UN, and at that point, I was a lot more mature, more experienced, and I quickly rose up through the ranks again. I became a corporal this time. And the Rangers had been shut down for a couple months by then because Panther 13 had left back when I left the first time. He had also left around that range, time range. And the General JB, I ended up becoming semi-close to him, and he ended up putting me and this other person, Sniper, in charge of the Rangers. Like, we became the first two Rangers.
All
And
right.
so that's when I truly got my first leadership position.
All right. So during your time in the UN, you said you basically were the one that recreated or like rose the Rangers, right? So were you
You,
so you're basically a general, right?
no. At that point, I was still a corporal, and I was in charge of the Rangers. Um, the Rangers they were not trusted by JB. JB did not trust the Rangers because the Rangers every time somebody came and led the Rangers, they would become pretty good. They get a good branch going, and then they would all leave, right? And it was kind of he called it the cursed branch, and so I was really determined to prove him wrong. But at that point, I was kind of a troublemaker in the UN, because there were a couple people, UN Overlord as one of them, who I did not get along with. I did not agree with their practices. I did not agree with their behavior, the way that they did things, and so I was very outspoken about it. Right? I was very in their
Yeah.
face. That's not right. You shouldn't be doing that. You cannot do that. And so the funny thing is, usually in the UN, the traditional thing is if you are a leader of a branch, right, or high rank, you are in the UN Council, right?
Yeah.
But I was such a troublemaker that I was the leader of the Rangers, but they wouldn't let me be in the council. And
Oh.
they ended up putting I think he was a PFC or private apprentice grade 2 or whatever it was back then. And he ended up representing the Rangers there, not me, because they hated me so much. And that actually continued until all the way about 2 months before the UN fell apart. So it was like that for a good 5 or 6 months where I was not allowed in the council.
All right. So going back to Overlord, I believe he started like after the UN fell. He started like another UN, like the new UN under a new one, and I believe I met him in a game where he was a National Guard leader or Navy. Do you know
Hmm.
anything about that?
The Overlord had a very complicated history with the UN. He left several times to go create his own clan. He had spearheaded several massive rebellions inside of the UN. And each time he did, he would go make his own clan. The clan would end up falling apart and failing, and then he would end up rejoining. I don't know why, but JB every single time would let him come back. Personally, I would never do that, but he did. Um, and I believe before the UN actually fell, I think this was a good 3 or 4 months, at least, if not more. He was, yeah, he was in charge of the National Guard, but he was still in the UN at that time.
Hmm.
And then he led a big rebellion, took most of the members, and it ended up being, at least with the active people, it ended up being just me, JB, and Runehawk. It
Oh.
was just us three there. And so at that point, it was like the UN was pretty much dead. And so I was away for a couple months at that point, and then when I came back, the UN was kind of on its feet again. And this was, I believe, the third or fourth era of the UN, right? The third or fourth generation. Um, and that's when I really started to get high up there, right? Because all the old guard, the old influential people, were all gone now. And so it was basically just me and my mentor, Runehawk. He kind of taught me a lot of things.
All right.
And so we started a kind of a new generation of UN training. It's a lot more disciplined, um, a lot. It was just a lot more different from the norm. It was very different. The old UN would have you doing stuff like shooting at cones or practice breaching and clearing, stuff like that. I'm not saying it wouldn't be applicable, but it wasn't very good training, in my opinion. Whereas in the third generation, third or fourth, when we got back, it it became very, very intense. There was a lot of cutting, there was a lot of crouch slaps. That's when, in the UN at least, the crouch slap became really mainstream. Because before that, they hadn't done it very much. But at that point, me and Root were. I have this theory in the UN where there always has to be one asshole. Excuse my language, but there always has to be one. The first generation had Panther 13. The second generation had Runehawk, and the third, or I guess not the generations, but the first was Panther, second was Runehawk, and the third was me. And the person who's the asshole is always hated. Everybody always
Yeah.
hates them in the clan, but they always end up being the person that keeps it all together, which is is they need it. You know, you need that position. I still believe that you still need that in a lot of clans today, which is why it keeps them running. And so I ended up having to pick up that mantle of responsibility and do that job, even though I didn't want to. But it kind of fell on me because I was always that outspoken person, you know, who was really in the face of the NCOs and people. I remember there was a CJ Plague. He was in the clan forever. But he was, in my opinion, he was a great guy, but he was just incompetent. And one day I just exploded on him. I'm like, you should not be doing this. I don't know why JB put you in this position, but you shouldn't be training people like this. And I ended up, you know, being so hard on him that he ended up quitting the UN. And it was like that with several key UN individuals. In fact, Runehawk was the same thing. I exploded on Runehawk one day and I called him out on his bullshit and he left. So I mean, I was kind of JB's right-hand man towards the end, but I was also a thorn in his side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything I did with the belief that it was for the betterment of the UN. And I still believe that today. You know, I think that if I hadn't done what I did, the UN would not have lasted for those, you know, last couple months that it did. Because it wasn't in the condition to be supported on its own without that kind of hard-ass mentality.
So, from what I've heard, you were the vice president towards the end? Is that true?
Yeah, towards the end.
So,
because of JB's continued inactivity and he started distancing himself a lot more, I brought it up to the council. At this point, I had finally been inducted into the council, and I brought it up that I think that we should have a vice president. You know, no one had ever done that before. That was a really big, you know, I took a big risk proposing that because it had always been, you know, JB and Shadow Sniper were the leaders. They had all the power. You didn't challenge that power. And then I brought forth the idea, you know, maybe we should have a VP. And I ended up, I can't remember exactly how I achieved that, but I kind of ended up getting the popular vote from a lot of the members, from a lot of the other council members, and we kind of just forced JB into it. He really didn't you know, he had trusted me at that point because I'd been in there for so long, but I don't think he ever wanted that position.
all right. So basically, once the UN ended, it was disbanded by JB. He didn't want the UN to be up anymore, right?
Yeah, he was going off to college. He had graduated from high school, and he believed that he couldn't lead the UN anymore, so he didn't think anybody should. So he announced that he was going to disband the UN, and he had actually told me this about a week before he announced it to everyone else, and I'd been trying to convince him, persuade him not to, but when I found out that it was going to happen, it was inevitable, then myself and our lizard both left the UN to make the UNR.
All right. So it was a real big struggle to form the UNR, wasn't it?
It was. It was not easy. We started off with practically no members, and the UN. We had there was another member in there named Toxic Dakota who had left about a month before. He had gained about maybe 20 to 30 members, and we were pretty close, right? And so he suggested that we merge, and we ended up merging, and he merged his clan into the United Nations Republic. But what I did not know, what I didn't realize, is that the UN, I don't think it was JB himself, but it was somebody in the UN, I believe it was Blonty, that had said to Toxic Dakota that if you will take out the UNR, if you'll take them down, then they would form an alliance with them. And back then, you know, the UN was still the center of the community. You know, they were a huge power. If you had an alliance with the UN, which was not easy to do, if you had an alliance with them, you were pretty powerful. That was a very big deal back then. And so he ended up doing it, and that led to the infamous 501st incident where we were doing a training session, and he basically ended up doing, you know, saying, execute Order 66, I guess, from Star Wars. I thought it was stupid. But, and then all of his, and I was just kind of, I turned around, I'm like, wait, what? And then all of his members just started shooting me, and our lizard and another member, Yankee, UNR Yankee, not at that time. And so that began the first war that we ever went into, the UNR LOH war, which was a huge struggle for us. It was not easy because we were like four members against a 30-person clan.
Yeah.
You know, but we ended up winning primarily because of my use of political support. You know, I really went out to a lot of clans. I saw that in the battlefield, I was going to be outmatched. I wasn't going to be able to do anything. And the funny thing though is in a couple raids we actually did end up beating them, which I have no idea how we did because it was 12 against 4, but we beat them in about 2 raids. And then I went around to clans all throughout the community trying to get support against these guys. I ended up getting support from the Black Roses and the GGC. They both pledged to support the UNR.
Yeah.
And so this really intimidated Toxic Dakota. He was a very early clan leader. This was like his first clan that he ever led, and he was very afraid that his reputation was going to get destroyed if he continued this war. So he ended up surrendering to me, and that was the first war that we ever won. Kind of our war for independence, you could say. It wasn't directly fought by the UN, but the UN kind of instigated it, and they sent them after us, but it wasn't successful. And that really kind of launched us out and kind of made a statement towards the UN that, hey, we're not going anywhere anytime soon.
So did JB approve of the UNR?
JB at first did not like it, right? He didn't like the fact that I was leaving. He thought it was stupid. He thought it was going to fail. Rightly so. I mean, plenty of my other clans had failed. Why wouldn't mine?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't this time? And so at first he did not, but after he left, after he disbanded the UN, the UN remnants, all the people there, were trying to continue it, right? And I'll go into that in a second. But they tried to continue it. They did not approve. They did not want me using the name. But after that, after JB kind of left the scene, he said it was okay. He didn't care. And I made it very clear to him, my number one goal from the get-go of starting the UNR was to have a place where all the UN remnants, where all the people could go once the UN fell. Because I had spent, at that point, like a year and a half, if not 2 years, working on this clan, being in this clan. So had the majority of the community. At that point, almost everybody had been in the UN at one point or another. And so it was very, shocking. And it felt kind of like your childhood, your history was being ripped from you. I had all these great memories, all these great experiences, made all these friends. And I didn't want these people to just be thrown out on the street like, okay, well, where do we go from here?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I left about a month early or a couple weeks early, is so that I could have it all set up and ready for those people at that time. But they ended up continuing. All the officers made their own UN. I believe they called it United Nations Gaming, or United Nations Global, excuse me. And so they called it United Nations Global. There ended up being a fight between Triadic Brush and, oh God, what was his name? Undefined Thunder, I believe. They ended up splitting the clan because they did not agree, right? There was conflicting mindsets. A little civil war kind of started, and the UN remnants, the United Nations Global, split in half. And that's going to be an important thing here in a second when we talk about on Halo 4. But, so they split in half. The UNR wasn't, the old UN members, they didn't all join UNR like I expected. So I was kind of disheartened for a little bit, and this was about 1 month or 2 months away from Halo Reach coming out. And so I was like, you know what, or Halo 4, excuse me.
No problem.
Yeah. And so I was like, you know what, I don't think that our time is on Halo Reach. I don't think that that's where we should come out. So I'm going to wait until Halo 4. And so I had some time to start working on a recruitment video. I started working on my website. I got everything ready for Halo 4. And I joined NavCon to kind of pass the time. And so then by the time that Halo 4 came out, I moved my clan onto there. And Triadic Brush, who was the leader, if you remember, of United Nations Global. I keep saying that. Yeah. United Nations Global. And I don't remember what faction he was. They split off into 2 different names. Those have been lost to me. Maybe someone can put them in the comments. But he ended up merging his clan with me. And I've had some bad experiences with Triadic. We're not friends right now, but I gotta say, my clan the UNR would not have gotten to where it is today. We would not be around today if it wasn't for that initial merge, because he really kickstarted our guys, because when I first started on that game, I had already had about 20 to 30 members because of him merging. So because I had all those resources, I really just, skyrocketed as soon as we got onto Halo 4.
So, from what I believe, that you said there was basically a split between the factions and everything. Was there? I've heard that there was a UN director, opposer of the UN.
A UN director, yeah. he came later, actually. He came about, let's see, 2 to 3, probably two, actually, about 2 months after Halo 4 came out. He is a complete fraud. He was not in the UN at that time. He was not one of those factions. All he did was he saw the UN was gone, he saw the name, and he decided to leech off that. He saw that as an excuse to take all the maps. He saw that as an excuse to take the structure, the website, anything he could, just the name. And a lot of people accuse me of leeching off the United Nations name. That's why I got successful.
Yeah.
But it couldn't be further from the truth. The only reason my name is even remotely close to the United Nations is because it was originally designed as a place for them to go, right, when the UN fell.
Yeah.
It was to continue its legacy. And I made that very clear to Shadow Sniper and JB that this was not bringing the UN back. This was not, beating a dead horse. This was me continuing on all that they had accomplished. And that's why they agreed to it. And that's why they still, I talk to them occasionally about clan stuff, what's going on at the UNR. And I think that they're pretty happy and pretty proud of what, we've been able to do with their name. Because people like UN Director, they really piss me off, honestly, because they put no effort forth. They make no efforts to redesign the structure, to change anything. All he did was simply leeching off the name. And I actually have a video on my channel about me and our lizard confronting him about this. So if you want to check that out, or if you guys in the comments watching this video want to check that out, you can see exactly how he talked and what his mindset was. And you'll see right away that he was just leeching. He had no affiliation to the UN whatsoever.
All right. So I'm just going to quickly talk about General Dewey. It's going to be like a little short topic, but when I was in the interview with SentryStrike himself, he was saying something about he does have contact with JB, but he says that JB does not really have like the right mind asset on like how he views the community. Do you have anything to weigh in on this, or are you confused?
Well, can you elaborate on what you mean? You mean JB does not care about what's going on?
Well,
or
like what I mean is like he views the community as like people are his puppets. That's the way SentryStrike said it.
Right. Well, I mean, to be honest, I think all old generation clan leaders thought like that. SentryStrike himself, I'm going to avoid trying to trash on SentryStrike because obviously we don't get along. Everybody knows this. I mean, that's a story for a different day.
Yeah.
But SentryStrike has that mentality too. Almost all old clan leaders do, because that's just how things were back then. That's how the old community was like. They used their members. They were tools. And part of the reason is because back then members were so unpredictable. One day they were in your clan, the next day they left. You couldn't count on them. And especially JB, this is what I witnessed, is that he ended up emotionally disconnecting himself from the majority of his members. Because in the UN was infamous for having kind of like a revolving door with members. Someone would be in the clan and be out the next week. It was just constantly cycling brand new members, which kept it interesting. It did. But if you're a clan leader, right, like me, myself, I am very attached to my members. If one of them leaves, I get upset, But back then, if JB had done that, the clan would have ended much, much, much sooner than it did. Because if you had emotionally attached yourself to that many people and they had made that many rebellions, they had left that many times, it would really take a toll on you. Yeah. And that's what the UN kind of taught me, that example, is that nobody can end the clan except the clan leader. If he continues, a lot of people say, oh, well, there was a rebellion in my clan, so I had to end it. You don't. You can always build your clan back up from the ground. I've done it several times. It's just the way that things got to go. That's how clan leaders are successful. That's why people always see the UN. It's like, well, the UN is so successful because JB never gave up. Well, he did eventually, but for the majority of the time, he didn't give up after all these countless rebellions. I don't think I could ever be that strong. So, I mean, people don't give JB enough credit for that. I gotta give him credit.
Yeah. So we're gonna move on to Halo 4 because from what I've heard, like a lot of clans failed like on Halo 4. Like many clans have disbanded, like such as
Yeah.
DoD. My own clan UAF disbanded when Halo 4
Right.
came out. Uh, Countless, even the UN, I'd have to say, they disbanded during the times of Halo 4, but it wasn't because of the actual game, right? So
Yeah.
can you like give me your opinion? How was it moving to Halo 4?
Well, I think the key thing to remember with this is that the clans that were successful on Halo Reach, if you look at history, the clans that were successful on Halo Reach were not successful on Halo 4. And vice versa. The clans that were successful on Halo 4 generally, I'm not saying for all cases, but generally were not successful on Halo Reach.
Hmm.
It's mainly the mindset. They were two completely different games. They were developed by two completely different developers. They had two completely different forge systems, engines, graphic designs. They were just polar opposites. And so you look at clans like DoD and CENTCOM, these clans were not bad, and they survived on Halo 4 for a while, but it was extremely difficult to adapt because they had spent the last year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years on Halo Reach learning to adapt to that terrain, to this, large warfare, to all these different elements. And once they went on Halo 4, it was such a different environment that they just couldn't adapt, and they ended up falling. The only reason I think my clan was successful, or at least semi-successful on there, is because I was so new. I had started my clan up like a month before Halo 4 came out. So I was very easily able to adapt to that new game engine, all the new elements. And I think that's true for a lot of other clans. If you look at the current or past community powers, clans like the UF, the UHR, all these clans, they started up on Halo 4. I mean, some of them won't admit it, but they started up. They truly got to where they are because they were on Halo 4 at the right time in the right place. Honestly, I don't think the UNR or myself would be successful at all if I was not in the right time at the right place.
Hmm. All right. So we're gonna move into SentryStrike a bit because I believe I met you quite a bit in like a chat with SentryStrike, and you guys
Mhm.
were more acquaintances, or you guys were pretty much friendly with each other at that time. So was it more or less you guys were just like building up your clans and you were more friendly to each other? That's why you guys were all pretty much good with each other for that time being?
Well, I gotta try to remember here. Me and Sentry Director, the thing that you need to keep in mind with us is not that we hate each other, but we have two completely separate ways of thinking.
Hmm.
Sentry Strike is very old community. He wants to bring back the old community values because he was in there for so long.
Yeah.
You know, he was in the community way longer than I was. And then I embodied this kind of new clan leader, that he despised. He didn't like it because we led different types of clans. And so at first, I wouldn't say we were ever acquaintances. I wouldn't say we were ever even friends. I would say that we just didn't fight at that point. We were new. I was new, and we had just met each other. But I don't think we were ever friends. The breaking point was when they declared war on the UHR, who at that point was my ally. In fact, I was very, very defensive of the UHR because I was kind of getting them started. I was helping them with their members a little bit. I helped them train their members, not a lot, but a little bit. I made their recruitment video for them. I helped them out with a lot of stuff. And so UHR was one of my first allies. And when UUF declared war on them, it was seen as an act of really, really, really bad imperialism, and that was seen by all of us, me, DoD, CENTCOM, UF, and UHR, the five clans, and that's what that infamous Halo 4, UUF community war was all about, is they went after UHR, and it's kind of like World War I if you think about it, whereas it wasn't necessarily we formed a coalition to take down the UUF because we thought that they were too powerful or that they were going to take over the community.
Yeah.
The only reason we formed a coalition is because we were all allies with each other. The USOH back then is what they're called, the UF. The USOH was allies with the UHR. The UHR was allies with DoD. DoD was allies with USOH. USOH was allies with me, I was allies with all of them, and so regardless of what happened, if one of us had gotten pulled into the conflict, which they did, UHR, all of us were going to get dragged into it, because UHR got war declared on them, I enter the war, then Noble enters the war because I entered it, and then DoD and CENTCOM both enter the war. So that's really the only reason this coalition was created, is because we were all friends, we were all allies. So that's a real big common misconception that Sentry Director himself likes to throw about, is that it was a planned coalition to take him out because he was too powerful. It was not because he was quote unquote too powerful. It was because he would not adapt to the new times. The new community was heavily based on fair raid rules, fair maps, peace, and to be honest, that's probably part of the reason that the Halo 4 community fell apart. There was just not enough action going around. But we really had the mindset of, if you're going to go to war with somebody, you need to go to war with them for the right reasons. Yeah. And UUF had no valid reason to go to war with UHR. It was just a imperialistic act, plain and simple. And all you have to do is look at their videos, and it's clear that that's what they were doing, In fact, I think a lot of them were called, UUF Age of Imperialism. They don't even try to hide it. And so it's ludicrous to think that the UUF were the good guys and we were the bad guys in this situation.
So during this time, I believe he also changed the name of UUF to the NRI, the National Records in Premium. From what he explained, it was more or less that he was trying to develop something more on the website, more politically. And as you've seen, there was a lot of videos that he uploaded that was showing off the power of the NRI and everything, the intelligence of the NRI. Now, many people have also commented saying that the NRI is Nazi or communist. What is your opinion on that?
Well, real quick, the NRI in the UUF war, right? He changed the name of his clan to NRI several months after that happened. That was way, way, way far apart. Those were not close to each other, or at least to my knowledge. What I remember happening is we ended up beating him on his unfair raids, and of course he's going to argue this. Oh, look at the waypoint, all that BS. All right, I'll get into that later if you want to talk about it. But the main thing is that he ended up getting beat, or he ended up getting pressured, and his clan kind of collapsed. And they fell back onto Halo Reach. They were on Halo 4 for a while, okay? I know a lot of people are saying that there was a peace or a surrender pact that was made, that the UUF was surrendering, and then they went off Halo. That's not what happened. It is not what happened. What happened is the UUF ended up basically just stopped fighting, and they stopped communicating with us. He wouldn't accept my party invites, he wouldn't fight us in any raids, he wouldn't do anything. So a lot of people assumed, oh, that means he's surrendering. I think there was talks between UHR and UUF about a peace treaty, but don't quote me on that because I wasn't really included. At that point, me and the UHR started to drift apart because of Puffy. Puffy J UHR was just a terrible individual. But the NRI, I think a lot of it was just Strike trying to rebrand the UUF. And I can't tell you too much information about this because, to be honest, I wasn't there for a lot of it. A lot of this took place on Reach. But from what I remember, it was very, very, very political. It was about, sending a strong message to, I think, primarily the UNSC community, but I think he had still planned to kind of sweep back around and, kind of take revenge on those military clans that had pushed him off. But at that point, it was basically just UHR and UF and me that were left. DoD and CENTCOM were gone at that point.
So we're going to move to the UNSC since you did bring it up. So SentryStrike, obviously, he does not like he doesn't like the UNSC community, and many of the old community leaders don't like the UNSC community. And in my opinion, I slightly do not like the UNSC community. What is your opinion on it?
I like the UNSC community. I have a lot of friends in there. They're good people. They have a very high standard. The thing that you need to know about UNSC clans is that they are very different from military clans. Military clans, I want to kind of bring an example here. Military clans are like candles, right? They're both candles, UNSC clans and military. The UNSC clans burn twice as bright, but burn twice as quick. they burn out.
Yeah.
The military clans, they're very mellow. They're kind of standard. They take things slow. They're not very dramatic. In everybody's face. We're going to go declare war on everybody, with the exception of a few, obviously. But UNSC clans are very, very, very. I guess you could say hostile. I don't want to say hostile. I'm going to say aggressive. They, if you're not in their clan, they fight you basically. And so with that mentality, yeah, they're very powerful. They have to have good militaries. They're very strong. They're filled with very smart people too. But they burn very quickly. They burn out. A clan pops up here, within a month, they're gone. Whereas a military clan usually lasts about 3 to 4 months before it finally collapses,
Yeah.
in my opinion. So I don't have any problem with the UNSC community, but I do not support how aggressive they are. They are extremely aggressive. If you're not with them, then you're immediately against them. There is no middle ground. But that's just their mentality, It's just the way that they fight. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just very different from the military community. So, of course, we're not going to get along.
So we're gonna move on to the present right now. So from what I know, Navcom is the face of the UNSC community. It's one of the biggest clans within like the Halo community itself, right?
Um, I would say Navcom is influential because they have a very good reputation. I don't know about if they are still the strongest. I'm not going to touch that because I don't have the knowledge or information to make that claim. From what I've been hearing, they've been struggling a little bit, but they're still around. They're still powerful. I'd say that they're just the face of the UNSC community just because they've been around for so long. Almost everybody has been in Navcom at one point in time. Even I've been in Navcom before. So,
So
yeah, I'd say that they're pretty powerful.
all right. So we're also gonna state right now, like, who do you believe is like the strongest in the military community at at this time?
At this time, that'd be a very it's a tough claim personally because a lot of clans are around but are not participating in Master Chief Collection or in Halo 4. They're just kind of free floating right now. They're playing on other games. They're still around, but they're not active.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that my clan's the strongest because, of course, I'm biased.
Yeah.
I don't think NRI or UUF, whatever the hell he's calling it now, he changes his name every 3 seconds, so I can't keep track. The UUF, I don't think that they're even remotely close to the top. They have influence, yes, but from what I've seen, his member count is not large. His training is not good. I would not say that the UUF is even close up there. And that's not because of my personal hatred of Strike or my personal bias experiences with him. It's just a fact. They don't participate that much anymore, which leads me to believe that they don't have that many people.
Yeah.
Usually you can tell when a clan is active militarily or not.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna state it right here. Like during the time of like even my top 10 countdown that I've made, right? I was researching into a lot of clans, and Master Chief Collection wasn't out yet. So I was searching a lot of clans, and there was still a lot of clans. Like apparently there was a new UAF, there was your clan, and there was many more clans that were in Halo 4 or Halo Reach. I'm not really sure, but from what I seen, your clan was one of the most developed one in the community, and it was also one of the most strongest. So I'd, in my opinion, say that you guys are probably you guys are the top of the military clan community. Now I
Yeah,
know
well,
you may disagree, but it's just my opinion because I know a lot of the time you say like, "Oh, the UNR shouldn't be at the top" because
yeah.
you don't praise your clan the way some other people do.
I agree that we should be at least somewhere up there, but I'm not saying, we should be at the top. I'm not a very trying to find the word for it. I guess arrogant. I'm confident, of course. I have some degree of arrogance. Everybody does.
Yeah.
But I don't think that I've earned the status of being a community, leader yet, or my clan is at the status of being a community power. Are we well developed? I would say so. I mean, I would say we have a pretty solid structure. We have a pretty solid media, a pretty solid website. We have a lot of innovations and stuff that we've been working on. But part of the reason for that is because we've been working on this nonstop for like the past year. And as a result of that, our clan strength has suffered. We still have a good amount of members. We're still pretty strong, but we haven't been actively recruiting. We haven't been actively training. We're very close with each other. We get on, we talk with each other every single day. So we're a very tight knit group. But in terms of numbers and training, I would not say that, we're a huge power. Are we developed? Yeah. We have stuff like the CENTCOM panel. Nobody has anything like that. Our website is really far ahead of people. Our media is pretty well developed, I would say. But in terms of our execution of the actual clan, it's yet to be seen whether or not we're going to be a big influence.
All right. So from what I've seen so far on YouTube videos and everything, you guys are one of the first clans to be developed in the Halo Master Chief Edition, right?
Yeah, we moved on here as soon as it came out.
So basically, we've also like dropped all connections with Reach and Halo 4, so you're moving on. Can
Yeah.
you like explain? Is there anything that's going to happen in the future, like anything that hasn't come out or you don't want to release yet, just that's going to happen with the UNR in Halo: The Master Chief Edition, like the future of the
Well,
UNR?
the the Halo 4 community left us with a very, very, very good lesson. And that is that the you need to have growth in order for the community to survive. Part of the reason the Halo 4 community died off is because there were new clan leaders that didn't have the drive to start new clans. It wasn't like in Reach where, there would be clans all over the place, spread out every single, day a new clan is sprouting up, even if they're just 5 members. Now on Halo 4, the mentality was more, okay, there are these groups of clans. There's the UNR, the UHR, the USOH, DoD, CENTCOM. Which do I join? There wasn't the mentality, okay, well, there's these clans. I'm going to go start my own. And so part of that was that these clans, they got pretty big, they got pretty influential. But because there was no new clan sprouting up, as soon as these old ones fell apart, like DoD and CENTCOM, right, as soon as they collapsed, there was nobody to rise up and take their place. You need to have that. You need to have people taking their place. And so, since there wasn't anybody to replace DoD and replace CENTCOM, the whole community just became inactive and fell apart. And so, I've dedicated the past year to planning the growth of the community. Honestly, is my goal is not to rule the community. And I know people are going to call me an imperialist. People are going to call me, compare me to LOS or UUF, NavCom. That's not my goal. I'm prepared for it, but primarily what I want to do is I want to go out and I want to help these small clans get started. And I want to go find them, right? Because like I said earlier in the video, when I was young, I led all sorts of clans. I had a new clan every month, and it fell apart. It collapsed. They were terrible. They were terrible clans because I had no idea what I was doing. I had nobody to mentor me. I had nobody to tell me, okay, you shouldn't do this. This is a bad idea. I had to learn all those lessons the hard way. But I learned them, and I don't want people to have to go through what I did. That's not my goal. So I want to go around. I want to find these new clans, these small clans, these people that only have 5 members who are looking to be the next CENTCOM, to be the next DoD, help be the next UNR. And I want to help them grow. I want to help build them a structure. I want to help make them recruitment videos. I want to help train their men. I want to get these small clans to be well structured and well off, and then I'll let them go and I'll let them do what they need to do. So that's what I'm planning right now. A lot of what we've been working on with our website especially is community elements. We want to have features from the community. We want to have places where the community can grow and prosper and communicate. Because another reason why Halo 4 kind of died off is there was no channel. If you remember on Halo Reach, yeah, General JB's channel, that's where everything kind of revolved around. Everyone talked on there. That's how you met new people. That's what I kind of want to do. I want to bring back that center, that one place, that hub where everybody can talk and communicate. And thank God I have people like my web dev members, Seth and Matt, who are able to make these amazing things like an interactive community map, where you take your mouse and you hover over these little dots and it brings up information on the clan. There's all sorts of things that we can do that we're working on that wouldn't have been possible years ago, that won't be possible in the future if they aren't doing that. So in Halo 4, I was very self-centered. I focused on the UNR and only on the UNR, and that was a mistake on my part. And in this new generation, this new platform, I really want to focus on helping other people, helping the community, and getting it on its feet. Because if we don't do that soon, there won't be a community left to take care of anymore.
All right. So it's getting into 45 minutes of this video so far. We're just gonna quickly end off this video, but I want to ask you because I've asked SentryStrike, is there anything you want to say to the community, anyone who's watching this video? Because he said something that I'm
Yeah.
just saying. Yeah.
Yeah, just like I said, just if you need anything, if you need help, don't be afraid to come to me. Don't be afraid to ask me. Come talk to me, and I'll be more than willing to help you out with whatever you need. It's if we're going to progress and we're going to get this community back on track, we need to come together as a group and collectively figure out how to continue the community. So when I launch stuff like our website, when we continue to make YouTube videos, subscribe, share these videos, get them out to people because my goal is not to improve the UNR, but to improve the community. But I cannot do that without your guys' help and your guys' cooperation and support. So if you participate in the website when it comes out, if you participate in the YouTube videos, talk about issues in the comments, like the videos, share them, we'll be able to achieve this goal much, much, much faster. But if we don't have your guys' support, we're not going to be able to do it. So that's all I got to say. Thank you for having me on here.
All right, I'd like to thank you very much, LingLing, for joining me on this interview. If you guys enjoyed this video or you guys want to basically express what your opinion is on any things that was said in this interview or about the new community, leave a comment down in the description below. I'd like to hear it, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people would like to hear it, and I'd probably ask more of those questions in other interviews with other iconic figures to the community. Anyways, thank you, LingLing. It's such an honor to have you on this video.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Anyways, that is it for this video. Bye.